Well, I think every one of these presentations and every one of these speakers have kind of given startling, thought-provoking information. This is a briefing. It's a briefing. And look how much information we've covered today. I think it's amazing. And all is to the credit of the speakers that we've had in the room and the talent that we've had. So we're going to end our day with a snapshot of what's happening in the state of Michigan, state policy, maybe a little crossover to federal because that just happens, and the need for recruiting talent in these areas, and also the need for research, further research, some of which we're deep into here on our campus, but it keeps going. Research is more information that we need to build on to create these kinds of smart societies that we're planning on. So I would ask Matt Smith to come up, who is with Michigan's Department of Transportation, and we also have Satish Adpa, who is the Executive Vice President for Michigan State University's Administrative Services. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
You bet. Either way, want to check out your presentation?
Yeah, it's not so much a presentation, it's just background materials. I'll get to take a look at it. Unfortunately, Senator Caldwell could not be here this afternoon. Apparently, the State Senate is still in session. Actually, he could not make it. I know Senator Caldwell was going to speak a little bit about the recent legislation that was passed in Michigan on automated vehicles. So I figured I would touch on that. Since Michigan Department of Transportation, we supported Senator Caldwell's legislative efforts on supporting this legislation. So I'll touch a little bit about that, and then talk about how specifically at the Department of Transportation, what we're doing is support automated vehicles, and more importantly, connected automated vehicles as we go forward. So to talk a little bit about the legislation on automated vehicles. There are a series of a package of 4 bills that was signed into law in December of 2016, doing a variety of different things. So I'm going to attempt to go through some high level of those 4 pieces of legislation, with hopefully not confusing too many people. Now, the first piece of legislation actually has 4 parts, so I'm really going to confuse people on that. But starting with Public Act 332 of 2016, was really the meat and potatoes of the legislative efforts that went through and essentially authorizing automated vehicles. So there are 4 parts to Public Act 332. The first part essentially allows automated vehicles, allows vehicles without drivers to operate legally on any public roads in the state of Michigan. Previously, a couple years before that, there were some legislative efforts that went through to expand the testing of experimental vehicle technology on the roadways. The OEMs, the Tier 1 suppliers, always had this ability. The legislation passed a few years ago established the eligibility to technology companies to test out this automated vehicle technology on the roadways. One of the side effects of that was it actually outlawed driverless vehicles on the state of Michigan. So the legislation, Public Act 332, removed that restriction. It also removed the restriction to just Tier 1 supplier, automotive companies and Tier 1 suppliers. So essentially, any vehicle, and here's the key, any vehicle that can be licensed by the Secretary of State, which means it has to be approved by federal motor vehicle safety standards, any vehicle that meets those standards, whether it has a driver or not, can legally operate on the roads of public roads in Michigan. What's really important about that is the fact that what Senator Caldwell, what the state legislature, what the governor wanted to do, and we supported, was to remove remove the state government as an obstacle for having this technology deployed. We did not want to go down the route of like some other states that we were mentioned before, California and Nevada specifically. They have very intensive regulations that put state government in the middle of certifying individual technology, pieces of technology. We did not, the state of Michigan did not want to do that. But what's key is we really left that to the federal government, NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, to establish whatever vehicle standards that they deem are safe. Then in Michigan, that means then it's also deemed safe in the state of Michigan. Right now, you can't buy a vehicle off the lot with fully automated. level 5, so to speak, automation. But when NHTSA does allow a vehicle like that to be sold off the dealer lot, it is legal to operate in the state of Michigan. And that's what's the key, is that role for certifying that technology in the state of Michigan. The legislative efforts recognize that that role lies at the federal level rather than at the individual state level. And we're also hoping that as that serves a model forward to avoid patchwork regulatory frameworks that exist or have the potential to exist across the country. So that's the first piece of Public Act 332. The second piece of second piece of Public Act 332 enabled for a automated vehicle network, an on-demand automated vehicle network. Legalize that. So basically what that means, you think the Ubers of the world, the Lyfts of the world, vehicles that can operate on demand in the network in autonomous mode is now authorized under public law. Okay, so that was another key component. Two more components of 332. The other one, the third one, which really has a big impact on freight movement and commercial vehicle movement, and that's why it's in there, is the elimination of the following distances, the required following distances between heavy vehicles if they are controlled by, in platooning format, which means they're controlled electronically in coordinated speeds using advanced technology. So basically what that means right now is trucks cannot follow each other closer than 500 feet, regardless of whether they have advanced technology on board or not. Now, if there's advanced technology on both of those vehicles that can communicate with each other, that can allow safely closer headway and closer application, that headway requirement is exempt. Those truck platoons are exempt from that headway requirement. Those vehicle platoons, right now, I think there is a 1 year or a 6-month sunset, but right now, any truck platoons that want to operate that have to submit a plan to the state police and the Michigan Department of Transportation. After, I think it's a 6-month time frame, then those efforts don't need to submit the plan anymore. They can operate legally under the law. So there are a lot of efforts that happen. We partnered with the U.S. Department of Army, TARDEC, which does all the research and development of automotive technology in Southeast Michigan. They've already done some of these tests of this platoon technology on the roadway. And currently we are, Michigan DOT in conjunction with the state police are evaluating the first application for commercial use of this technology by a technology company that has signed up a couple of national freight companies to use the technology. So the fourth component of Public Act 332, it deals with something that I think is probably one of the more unique components of everything. It establishes a Council on Future Mobility. This Council on Future Mobility, under statute now, will meet at least once a year, if not more often, to advise the state legislature on any new tasks or efforts that they may want to consider to take to keep abreast of changing mobility technology. This is a public and privately staffed council. There are leaders from public agencies, from the state legislature, and private companies, auto companies, technology companies, insurance companies, all part of this Council on Future Mobility that at least every year is going to provide a report on guidance to the state legislature. That's kind of interesting, kind of unique, because technology is moving really quick, and if we wait to be reactive, and if the state legislature waits to be reactive, and the Department of Transportation, if we start advising our bosses in reactive mode, we potentially run the risk of stunting the development of this technology. So this council is going to serve a great purpose. They actually just met as a council for the first time last week, and it promises to be a couple key issues that are going to be focused on that hopefully as that report gets finalized will be great points for discussion. So that's Public Act 332. The other ones are going to go a lot quicker. Public Act 333 of 2016 also allows automated on-demand vehicle networks, but specifically for car companies. It specifically says car companies can do the same thing as automated technology companies. They can operate their fleet of vehicles in automated mode and on-demand service. So reading between the lines, I'm sure we can probably expect those mobility as a service type of projects to be present on Michigan roadways here soon from both the technology companies and the automobile companies. Public Act 334 authorizes the Council or the American Center for Mobility. And we heard that before. We heard that earlier from the gentleman from Michigan Municipal League. Is he still here? Yeah, there you are. Okay. Public Act 334 pretty much authorizes this in legislation and more or less means that any public roadways that are used as part of that center don't necessarily have to adhere to Michigan motor vehicle laws, and that's huge for testing out a lot of that technology. So we're excited. The ACM was established as one of the 10 national proving grounds for automated technology, and they expect to have the first testing underway with a lot of their facilities completed by December of this year. So the fourth piece of legislation was Public Act 335 of 2016, and this public act provided specific protections, some specific liability protections for automobile mechanics who start working on automated vehicle technology. Essentially, what it does is it says that if mechanics follow manufacturer's recommendations and policies and procedures, they're exempt if something goes wrong with the technology. That was really key. We heard that a lot. That's, I think, what we heard earlier before is some of the talk about what's out there with the unknown, what's going to happen with a lot of the liability and risk angles of the law. That's one area that we heard that folks were, that the state legislature heard that folks were concerned about is folks working on this aftermarket. So that was pretty important. So those are the four big pieces of legislation that are out there right now. What's really interesting is this has become a model for other states to follow. There are at least 4 other states that have asked for copies of this legislation and what's in there, so they can start using this as a model, because they see this as a way that governmental barriers can be reduced to the development and deploying of private sector and developing and deploying this technology. Interestingly enough, the California Department of Motor Vehicles just issued a recommendation to their state legislature saying this is the kind of legislation they'd like to see, and it looks strangely a lot like what was just signed into law in Michigan. So it really is being used as a model across the country, and that was through a strong partnership between the state legislature, between the supporting state agencies, between automobile companies, between freight companies, technology companies. It was kind of awesome to see everyone get together to the point where in both the state Senate and the state House, there were only 2 people who voted against it. Everything else, everyone else across the board voted for it, so we can't ask for much more bipartisan support than that type of legislation. So that's really exciting. That's some awesome stuff. So turning a little bit more towards, here we go. So you might wonder why we get involved in this. We don't build cars, we don't build card sensors, we don't build the technology that reside on cars. So essentially, when all is said and done, we really don't do much to build automated vehicles. But we can do a lot to support what's going on. And I'm not going to repeat a lot of what you heard today from everything from about what's going on in Stratford, Canada, and what you heard from the Michigan Municipal League, what you heard from our professors from Michigan State. I'm not going to repeat any of that. But what we can do as a Department of Transportation is support the connected aspects of what we truly believe are connected and automated vehicles going forward. If you take an automated vehicle, you start putting out information, say from a traffic signal or from a work zone, and put that information into an automated vehicle and make that automated vehicle all of a sudden become much more capable, much smarter. It's now connected also. So that's where we could come in and start providing support from the connection side, start supporting from the infrastructure and being able to communicate what's going on with their infrastructure. And we've been doing that for a while. I'm going the wrong way. We don't like to go backwards as a department, so we'll go forward. We really are doing this a couple different ways, and we got involved in the connection side, the vehicle infrastructure side, all the way back in 2005 when we started partnering with the United States DOT and the automobile companies to say, hey, we think there's some cool technology out there, can it work? So through a series of deployments in Southeast Michigan, through, sorry to say, the University of Michigan campus, I know that's probably not allowed to say that here, but I did anyway, a safety pilot model deployment that was done in 2012. All this work and all this investment happened, came to fruition, and essentially the U.S. DOT said, you know what, we see all this work that was done in Michigan, and we agree that this technology has huge potential for saving life. So you know what, we're going to mandate this new technology on all new vehicles. Much like safety belts, much like anti-lock brakes, electronic stability control, although as we heard today, electronic stability controls are great for teaching people how to steer on skids. But much like all this safety technology, even rear view cameras now, all safety technologies that are required on vehicles, the U.S. DOT, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is now saying, has a notice of all this rulemaking out there, saying we want all this technology to be on new vehicles coming off the assembly line. If this rule goes through a whole rulemaking process, by model year 2020, you will start seeing vehicles with this technology on board. That's mandated. Starting in about 2 months, if anybody here wants to get a Cadillac CTS, they will have that technology already on board. General Motors went ahead of the mandate and said, we're going to go ahead and put this technology on anyway. Regardless, wow, this is on some kind of... I don't need it anyway. Okay.
We just wanted to show the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no. Well, although I am a Penn State grad, I can't ignore that, right? The other Big Ten school. So through working. So we've been involved, Michigan's been involved for a long time in developing some of these applications, developing some of these, putting the infrastructure on the road to support here. There are 2 applications that we're working on right now that I think you already heard referenced. There's a work zone application and red light violation warning application, where all the work that Michigan is doing in partnership with the automobile companies is being used as a basis for deployment across the country. So everything that's happening, everything that we're doing is being used to set the framework for how this is going across the country. Now that's quite an honor. That also means there's quite a lot of eyes on it, and probably not quite a few that wouldn't mind seeing us trip up and make some mistakes. But that's not going to happen because we have a lot of support. We have support from the federal government. We have support from the auto companies and the tech companies, and that's fantastic. These partnerships we've developed have been huge. Like I mentioned, we don't, state government, we don't build technology. We deploy some technology on the roadside, but that technology is useless unless you have people on the other end, which are the vehicles and the drivers, to use and benefit from that technology. When I say vehicles, it could be equipment on board the vehicles, built into them. It could be people bringing cell phones on that we work with some cell companies in developing some type of application, or providing them information that they can use to develop applications. Those are all the cool types of things that are going on in Michigan, and we continue to serve the leadership role that folks spoke to us for. And we're not the only states doing this. Everybody is getting involved more and more. There are other states that have invested a lot. California, Virginia, and Texas in particular are doing a lot of this work. But we do work a little bit. We do work cooperatively with the other states. But needless to say, even those states do look to us. Look to what's, and I say us, I don't mean NDOT. They look to everything that's going on in Michigan, whether it's our local agency partners, NDOT, the automobile companies, the universities, about everything that's being advanced in this space. So I guess I should talk more about the cooperation we're doing. Because of that, because of a lot of the investments that we've put into this, we have had the opportunity to partner up with a lot of other entities, like I mentioned before. One of the more recent initiatives we've enacted is called the Smart Belt Coalition. It's a take on the Rust Belt Coalition. We partner up with Ohio and Pennsylvania to say, hey, how can we, instead of each state going alone, how can we start pulling together our resources, pulling together our universities, our research minds, our transportation agencies, our constituents of industry, and work together on deploying some of these applications cooperatively. So we've met together, we've established this coalition, and one of the first things we're doing is we're taking some of this truck platooning technology that I talked about, and we are going to start testing this out amongst 3 states so we can prove that this isn't just what one state's doing, this technology is going to work across state borders, because that's truly is going to have to be what happens. So a lot of work is going on. A lot of other work is going to go on. I'm going to wrap up here shortly. I know we're kind of running out of time. There is a lot of work going on across the country. Our state, our director, Director Kirk Steidel, has maintained a leadership role in a lot of organizations, which has brought a lot of favorable light on the state of Michigan as a whole. So we get involved in a lot of these national research efforts. There's American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, where we lead a couple of the working group efforts on deploying this technology. The Transportation Research Board has a whole host of different research programs going on. One in particular is the impacts of connected and automated vehicles on local communities and local transportation organizations. I could start reading, finding out numbers of what they are, but I can certainly get you the information later on where to find that information, and there's a lot of great information on there. A lot of those individual research topics, folks from Michigan, whether it's the DOTs or local agencies or research institutions, have contributed to that. So there's a lot of work going on. We are doing it cooperatively, but there's no doubt there's been a lot of investment in Michigan here. We've estimated that with our local institution, our local agencies, our research institution, and the state DOT, that over the past 10 years, upwards of about $30 or $40 million has been invested in this advanced transportation technology. And we're doing it because we want to receive the safety benefits from it. The side benefit from it is there are some economic development opportunities and benefits. So I appreciate your time. I know you all have had a long afternoon here, so I appreciate your time. And Anna, I guess I'll turn it back over to you.